Welcome back to our live training session. In this tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at how to set up our flex fuel based tune with this high compression K24 turbocharged setup. The last tutorial, we were able to make about 400 wheel horsepower on petrol fuel. We are super high compression, around 12.5, 13 to 1 compression. So we are definitely walking a razor's edge in terms of our knock and boost thresholds with petrol fuel. Now we can get the petrol fuel out. We can run ethanol, which is what I primarily intend to run in the fuel system on this vehicle. That's going to give me a lot more of a safety margin, allow me to get a little bit more aggressive with the timing, also being able to get more aggressive with the boost. So we don't know exactly where we'll go to, but we'll find that we probably can increase our boost pressure and definitely bump in our spark timing. And we should for sure see a decent power jump on ethanol fuel with this compared to petrol. Now, one concern I have is that the clutch in this vehicle is not rated at a high torque capacity, so I want to avoid slipping the clutch. I definitely don't want to push the power much past 500 horsepower at the wheels. We'll have to see how the clutch holds on as we're doing our tuning in the tutorial, and we'll push things as far as we can and doing it safely. The other concern would be the fuel system on this. It just has a drop-in 340 pump, and it has the staged injection. We have 440 primary injectors, 880 cc secondary injectors. So the total fuel flow rate out of the injectors isn't a lot. So we can't really push something like 800 horsepower out of this. Also, the turbocharger just simply will not run that kind of power output. It's a Gen 2 GTX 3071R. So it's going to probably support 550 out of the setup here on this dyno. So we'll see where we end up at. But with the ethanol fuel, we can get a little bit more aggressive with boost and spark timing, and we really will see the full potential out of the setup on ethanol fuel compared to petrol fuel. So let's jump in here and talk about a few things, just how we have the file set up, making sure we have everything in order. We're going to go ahead and drain the petrol fuel out using the test fuel pump option. I'll just talk about what I've done for this particular vehicle in terms of draining the fuel out. We'll put the ethanol in, we'll see where the ethanol content blend goes to, and we'll just start to do some baseline pulls, and then we'll experiment with some spark timing, make sure the fueling model is still good, and we might potentially turn up the boost pressure depending on where we pan out for horsepower and torque output of the engine. I'd anticipate with this high compression, just even running ethanol in the fuel system, without even adding any spark advance, I would anticipate making probably 30 to 60 horsepower more at the same boost level as what we found on petrol fuel. So it should be a substantial increase, but we'll find out what it makes in a little bit here. All right, let's jump in and take a look at how we set up our flex fuel, a couple tables, couple key things we need to keep in mind with this, and then we will take a look at doing our baseline pull and see where we're at. Okay, so first things first, I am live with the link. Taking a look down here, the ethanol content percent is showing 16%. There was a little bit of ethanol in the fuel system. I was doing previous filming with this vehicle in the naturally aspirated state before it was turbocharged. I drained all the petrol fuel out with that ethanol that was in there before. I put fresh petrol fuel in, but the blend is still a little bit higher than what I normally see at the pump, about 8-10%. So not a big deal. We dialed everything on essentially as low of a petrol ethanol content relationship as we find. So we were trying to get down to that 8-10%, but 16 was the lowest I found. So that's fine. We dialed everything in. Minimal differences should happen there in terms of any of the blending or any of the flex compensations that could take place in the calibration file, the way we set things up. So we do see that the ethanol content was showing 16%. I wanted to note that before we moved in any further. So let's jump over here, take a look at our flex window. So a couple things with this flex window. Let's go ahead and just close that window out there. So we've set up the flex option by going in here. Let's actually take a step all the way back here to our basics page. We set this on model multi-fuel. So model multi-fuel allows us to utilize the blending between pure petrol and pure ethanol, and it allows us to compensate for the fuel density differences between the fuels as well as the fuel stowage. So that's going to allow us to have a background multiplier, and whatever the ethanol content goes to, if we've dialed everything on petrol correctly, then when we go to ethanol, everything should fall in line. We really shouldn't have to make much of any fueling changes at all. The changes that we're going to have to make would be potentially for cranking fuel, for boost, for spark, things like that, but not for the actual fueling. So that should still be valid. So let's jump back in here, layout, let's go down here into flex. So let's take a look at a few things here. So we see our injector setup. This is for the primary injection setup for the primary injectors. We see they're set at 410s at 300 kPa. These are RDX 410cc injectors. Now, if we move down under multi-fuel, the injector flow rate at rated pressure, this is 410cc injectors. And we find here something else when I was building the base file. I don't know if this parameter or value is in here, but the secondary injector flow at rated pressure. Because we have secondary stage injectors, this value needs to be populated. Because we were tuning on essentially petrol fuel, I don't think this is going to have too much of an effect, but with the multi-fuel it does, because if we just flip over here to the stage injection, if we flip all the way over to staged, here we go. We're going to see that we've defined our secondary injector flow on petrol fuel at 880 at 300 kPa. So now when we're turning on the flex option, it'll start to look at what that flow rate's going to be. It needs to match what we have right here. So it's 880 so that the fueling model holds true. Let's flip back over here to flex. So I'm going to set this to 880. We might find that there's a slight deviation in the fueling now that I've corrected our secondary fuel injector's flow rate size here at the multi-fuel. So what this does is take a look at the primary injector. This is going to be assuming for pure petrol. This is going to be what it assumes for pure ethanol. It can interpolate between these two. So if we're finding that as we fire it off and we run it on ethanol, if it's not compensating properly, we could go in here and change the flow rate for this multi-fuel, which will allow you to clean up any kind of like odd deviations that, let's say, it's not compensating for. But I want to set, when I start off with this, I want to set my primary and secondary set of injectors the same right here. So we've set this the same. Fuel density, temp coefficient, and stowage. This is all related to pure ethanol. The fuel charge cooling coefficient. We're going to look at this once we fire up the engine and get some ethanol running through this. This might need to be adjusted. We tested this on petrol fuel, and we found that 20 was the sweet spot. Previously was at a value of 10 in the base file. 20 worked well. Now that we're changing fuel, this represents the latent heat of vaporization absorption of the air charge coming into the engine. So the air charge is going to have residual heat as we spray the fuel into the port and it meets that air. It's going to absorb some of the heat, and this is what that represents. So going from petrol to ethanol, this value probably needs to be adjusted a little bit. So we'll have to review this and potentially tweak and adjust that. So we made those changes here. Looking in our flex table here, flex window, we have our multi-fuel blend ratio table. Now this is going to be looking at the ethanol percent coming from our ethanol content sensor. It's going between 0 and 100%. And what this is going to do is 0% is going to be using all of our fuel main here. It's going to be using our stowage value for pure petrol, 14.7. And then 100 here is going to be using 100% of our fuel stowage for pure ethanol. And then it's also going to say at pure petrol of 0 here, it's going to be using our fuel density and temp coefficients. That's for petrol fuel. And then at 100, it's going to be using 100% of our ethanol, pure ethanol here, the density and temp coefficient. So
thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here. And you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.